All right, everybody, welcome to the Employer Content Show, part of the Talent Insight series brought to you by HireWell and CareerWell. I'm your host, James Hornick. Joining me is my co-host from Job Portraits, employer brand living legend, Nate Guggia.
The lead up to the intro, I just started smiling.
I know you're waiting on bated breath on what I'm going to say next.
I am.
All right. So today's we talked about this last week. Today we want to get real tactical and specific and talk about. I kind of titled it, how to create content. Nate and James share their process. I do get a lot of questions from. I'm always kind of I don't want to say shocked, but at HireWell, I like to think we're pretty good at making content. Don't want to toot our horns, but we're pretty good at it. Not the best ever, but the thing I had to put in the post I made yesterday is we don't have any full-time content marketers on staff here. There's no one here that directs us through this stuff. It's just we have one digital specialist who's excellent, who helps us out with a lot of the production stuff. But the rest of it, it's all just people doing our domain experts kind of in the recruiting area who just decided to get involved in content creation. So I think it's important to note that you can do a lot without actually having any dedicated content people on staff. And I've had quite a few people that actually have legit marketing departments ask me, so how do you make a podcast? How do you do these live videos and stuff like that? Which I always find kind of funny because they have a team of people who this is their actual job, but I just think content's a different thing. It's not, you can't really compare it to a lot of the other kind of marketing functional areas. So, but, and I know that people have asked both you and I both that all right, so they're just kind of curious, how we go about this and whatnot. So,
yeah. I've actually noticed that marketing teams, when they want to take what they do, but then apply it to what you're talking about, it's just different. The messaging is different. The energy is different. It's hard to take a formal, if you're used to formal marketing and then apply that to, let's say, LinkedIn organic content. The two aren't the same. So go ahead.
I think it comes down to content marketing it has to be driven by domain experts. You know what I mean? It can't be your marketing team who, if you're a software dev company and you're selling, if you want to talk about software, your marketing team literally can't write that content like your dev people have to, or at least kind of communicate that. And you can say that about any industry. It's the people actually doing the work have to be kind of involved in the content process, which is why it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I wanted to break this up in a couple things because I wanted to talk about, I'm just going to give away the farm, the HireWell, our content kind of process. And then you can and I want to hear kind of your comments on stuff you've done with clients that might kind of add on to that. Yeah. Then talk about me personally, which is really a subsect of the larger kind of the process. And then at the very end, I'm going to really rattle off what equipment to buy, what sites we use, what tools we use and stuff like that, in case people really just want me to tell them, here's what you need to buy, and you can do what we do.
Okay. So,
first off, the thing that I think is hardest for everyone is what the hell do you actually want to talk about? This is the thing that I think most people I've talked to have asked me, okay, how do you decide? How do you pick what topics? And I think it's real simple. First off, you have to have a company-wide brainstorm. It's optional. You have to open up to anybody who wants to be involved. You need to make sure you have leaders involved. So several people kind of on the leadership team have to be kind of behind this, but then open up to absolutely anybody else who wants to have a voice. It has you're going to get a lot of different ideas that you wouldn't have otherwise. You're going to have people who might be junior, just getting their career started. They're going to have completely different and valuable observations that you as the experienced person may take for granted because it's something you haven't thought of in a while. So you need to get people all levels just, to kind of get involved. I would do that once a month, once a quarter, making sure you're just brainstorming list of stuff you want to talk about. I also think that part is important because it's another forum for your employees to have a voice in the strategic direction of the company. So yes, it's a content strategy session, but it's also just a way to let people know they're being heard and contribute and whatnot. So that in itself, it has tremendous value. And lastly, I think that just in this one step alone, you and I have talked about how hard it is to get employee-driven content, how you don't really like the idea because it's hard to pull off. This is the way to ease people into it. So there's going to be a lot of people who aren't comfortable making content, being on video or posting, but will be comfortable participating in a brainstorming session And that's how you kind of get people slowly kind of integrated into like the larger initiative of if your goal is to get more people kind of involved in this stuff. This is how you get people who are maybe deathly afraid of like putting themselves out there to slowly kind of put a toe in the water. So.
Oh, yeah. I like that's smart. Yeah.
And I think it's like, I don't know, when we started doing that, I think that wasn't like to have these three things in mind. You just realize after the fact, like this is ultimately what the result is. So, So step one, trying to figure out, so what do you want to talk about though? So in these brainstorming sessions, here's what you do. For us, I'll phrase it in terms of recruiting firms since that's where we are, but like, what are your clients talking about? What questions are they asking you? What questions are candidates asking you? Like if you're a software consultancy, if you're a tax consultancy, if you're a SaaS firm, if you're whatever, like when whoever's talking to clients, what questions are they being asked? Whatever those answers are, that's what you need to be making your content about. Simple as that. Second thing would be trends. Like what trends are you like? Surely something is happening, especially this year of all times, but there's always something new happening, something different in the market. What kind of variables are you seeing that maybe you didn't see 3 months ago or something like that? Like those are all the things you need to talk about. Also like internally, I would say too, what questions do people have? Maybe your more junior employees who are learning their craft and learning your field. What questions do they have for more senior people, you know what I mean, about like, in our case, like recruiting business or whatnot, but I think it applies anywhere. Like what, if you're a software dev firm, what questions do your junior developers have for your senior developers about their, like that's another thing you should be making content about. So those are kind of the three things you want to be kind of uncovering in your brainstorm sessions. From that point on, it's just about divvying up assignments and, assignments I'll talk about kind of leading into this, like, I'm not huge on blogs as that's not your moneymaker, but that's like your baseline content to flush out a topic. So I'm always big on, I think people need to be better writers no matter what your craft is, what your skill is, like you need to get your writing skills down. So when we have these big list of brainstorms, do you have assignments? Okay. We'd like, someone volunteer for this blog, someone volunteer for this blog, someone volunteer for this blog, give out writing assignments. Make sure it's broken up between different people on the team. This is stuff that's maybe you have a whole quarter planned out. So it's not like it's a tight deadline where you're asking somebody, hey, we need this done kind of immediately, but give them time. And, but also it's a good way to have someone in charge of fleshing out, doing research. Okay, what else about this topic did we not think of in our own heads that we can go kind of Google and see what other people are kind of talking about that we can kind of include in the topic. So getting into that, so channels, blogs, newsletters, live events, social sharing, the whole Gary Vee model, ultimately. As we've said before, I'm not a huge Gary Vee fan, but the model he has is what you should be using. It makes too much sense. The money is in the social sharing for most places, but we'll come back to that last, because I think that's the thing that when people see people posting on LinkedIn or other social media, like how do we start doing that? That's actually the result of everything else you do. That part's easy once everything else is done. So blogs I already talked about, team-driven content, flush out each topic. It does create evergreen content for your site. It does boost your SEO. I think most importantly, though, it signals you're still active. Like whenever you see a company that has a blog that no one's like updated in 6 months, you just know they don't give a shit, like just by having stuff posted recently, you know what I mean? Like you have to make sure you're still posting somewhat regularly, just so people who will like check you out as more of a vetting process realize you're still at this. Newsletters, which I know is something you're going to have some things to say about because you do one yourself personally. I think they're underrated. I think they're very valuable. I think emails like the one thing, your list or one thing you own, short and pithy, just keep it. They don't have to be terribly long. It should be something you can write in 5 or 10 minutes. You're summarizing your blog post. You're summarizing what events you have coming up. You're backlinking events you already had. You want to make sure you're hitting the notes that really are kind of most relevant to whoever that core audience is. For us, it's like hiring managers, HR people, stuff like that. So like insights we have, they're kind of directly relevant to them. And then kind of getting to the heart of it and what we're doing right now. And probably if anyone is watching this and interested in what we're doing, like long form events, which I think are key because this is where you end up getting your social sharing and stuff from later. But I prefer, there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. I like doing the trifecta. You want everything live on every channel possible. You then want to back that up with like archive video on YouTube, and then you want to turn it into a podcast. So you have every channel hit.
Yeah.
You and I are going to talk for 30 minutes, 45 minutes today, and it's going to be one thing we can kind of use from there on out. Podcast strategy. I think that there's really 3 things to this. One is if it's a brand new area, if you can own it, you can be the first one talking about some new subject, great. If you can become the de facto go-to. I know Dave Gerhardt's talked about this a lot. I think for him it was like product or something like that when he was back at Drift. If there's a category you're related to that no one else is talking about yet, like you're home free. It's hard to do though. You know what I mean? Like there's a million places talking about recruiting out there. Then there's inviting. So that's 1. 2, an objective, inviting guests onto the show for both 1 for exposure and 2 for sometimes they're your real audience. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not, we used to do a lot of guests. We'll probably start doing guests again sometime. I don't love this. Like a lot of, I feel like everyone does it. I also feel like the thing that's challenging about guest is that some people are very comfortable doing live interviews. Some people are not very comfortable, and you don't really know which way the content's going. Personally, I think what I really like is knowing that like we put together a great show where people are going to get something out of it. There's nothing up to chance that whoever we have kind of on as the guest may or may not hit all the notes they need to, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which is why part 3, which is what I'm doing, what you and I are doing right now, is I like having shows. So this is where kind of our focus is like you and I do this show, employer content show. Jeff and I do the 10-minute talent rant. We'll occasionally have job seeker guests on for adventures in job seeking, but I know ahead of time exactly what we're talking about. We have an outline we're going to go through. It's stuff we've kind of put some thought into. And I know that like people who are in our audience are going to find some value out of this. Yeah. You know, whatever. And then kind of the last part about this before I kind of wrap up the rest of this kind of company strategy thing, the social sharing. So talking about this from your corporate account, not from your personal account, but from your corporate account, okay. You got to post every day. There's no reason not to, you know, but what you can do and post every day should be kind of a mix of different things. So you've got the clips from these events. You've got one thing that works great is online reviews, assuming you have good online reviews. Post those in a slideshow. Thing that's huge that always gets the most engagement, employee features, anniversaries, promotions, someone achieves something, anytime someone is a guest somewhere, talk about that. New features to your product or service, events you have coming up, client profiles and partnerships. We'll talk about our case studies we've done with certain clients and stuff like that. Hit all the notes. And these are just some ideas I have, right? Yeah. There's probably lots of other things I haven't hit on, but hit all the notes in terms of video, images, documents, or slideshows. You know what I mean? I would, we don't really do a lot of text posts for the company site, and also I should say, I'm not just talking about LinkedIn, but I'm also talking about Facebook, Instagram, you know, kind of whatever else. So that I just rambled through a whole bunch of stuff is high level what the strategy is for how we kind of go about things. And then once again, I'll say the key to make all of this work is getting people involved and getting as many people involved in your brainstorming sessions. Nice. Thanks, man. That was part 1 of 4 for today. So, okay. All right. My part about what we do is going to be much, much shorter. It's surprising, maybe not. We are a content studio that isn't great at producing content for ourselves because we're producing it for our clients. But it's really important that we eat our own dog food, that we do the things that we're telling clients they need to do. So if you go to the Job Portraits career site, you'll see all the content that we recommend, core pieces of content that we wrote for ourselves. But I think when it comes to the team member side, we have this process where when you're hired on as a new full-time team member, a couple of things happen. One of our writers schedules an interview and just interviews you for 45 minutes, like as a journalist, because that's the background that they all have. And they ask us a series of questions, and they take that and they put it into just a really well-written, polished blog post that lives on our career site. So you can find out, if you're interested in working for Job Portraits, you can find out like pretty deep stuff about everybody on our team. I'll tell you, the thing that did was it just made me feel special when I did it. It was just like, oh, this is super cool. You know,
doing something for me, and it's real, and I could share it with my family or whatever, and it was cool. But then another thing too is we have a process for recording a day in the life video. So there's a mic that everybody gets a budget for that they buy on Amazon. When you get and then we just have a process of everything you do. And you record basically clips of yourself throughout the day, because we're a fully remote company, built remote. It's important for candidates to see what it's like during our day. So I recorded mine, starting from the beginning when I wake up with my son and he's crawling all over me. And then there's, a piece where like I'm doing yoga during the middle of the day because that's some of the things that I do. And then one of our editors takes that and puts it together with music and stuff. And we have these like 1.5-minute videos that are all over our careers page too. And so I think it just like comes back to like process. And if you can put a process in place, creating the content actually isn't that hard. But that's where people get stuck, is they're like, oh, I need to create stuff, but they don't have a framework for doing this. So that's just us on the job portrait side. And then, as far as like activity on, who's the most visible, that's me. I'm the only one in the company who's doing it right now. I'm also the only one who really has interest in doing it. So that's the other reason I'm doing it. but it's fine. Yeah.
I think that I was going to say, so I want to get down to kind of personal process and whatnot and kind of hit things down, but just kind of dovetailing off one of the things you said there. It's easier than you think to have a lot of things to post from either a company or from your personal account once you kind of follow this process. Because once you start doing live events like this and you start recording them and you learn how to make clips, like you and I have both been in situations where like you and I have more videos to post than we'll ever be able to post, right? Yes. Like we've taken more clips from some of the stuff and we're like, I'm just never going to get around to this. So it takes, the content creation piece takes care of itself, as opposed to, I know a lot of people get burned out with trying to be active on social media because it's such a chore for them, but it's actually easy when you kind of take this approach. So, yeah. All right. Personal process. So this kind of dovetails a little bit on, it's a riff on kind of the greater company process and whatnot. So again, what I like to talk about, when I was talking about from a company side, like in the brainstorming sessions, what I talk about, questions I get, from job seekers, from clients, like anytime I get questions, that's stuff that you want to make sure you're kind of addressing in the kind of the content you create. Ideas I get from reading other people's stuff. Now, very important to say, do not steal other people's posts. Yeah. But if somebody brought up a topic you haven't thought of before, right, and you have, that creates a new thought in your head, like your own take on it, your own opinion on it, like that should be something that you should be comfortable kind of sharing with other people. It's a way that you arrived at, a take that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. A lot of times and this is the other thing too, is you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Like go back and look, whatever your company's content is, or whatever you guys have talked about in the last 3 months, like feel free to give your own kind of hot take on maybe some of those topics. You don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every single time. So especially, that is, I personally don't like just like taking something that someone else had, but like, at least in that case, like that's stuff that you guys did collaborate on, you know what I mean? So if there is kind of a hot take you have that's a little bit different on something you guys were talking about on that week or whatever, like that's something you should also be able to go. And once again, I'll say hard pass on motivational posts, hate them, will never be a fan, keep it tactical. Again, just my opinion. Mm-hmm. Other things to do, always take notes on ideas you have. I've talked about this a lot before. You want to have a library of stuff you can riff off of. You're going to have ideas. Any given day, you're probably going to have a dozen ideas in your head to make great things to talk about. You just kind of forget them, move on. I don't really use Hootsuite as a posting platform, but I downloaded it at one point in time, and I just use it as where I upload any random idea that comes in, because it's both on my phone and on my browser. So wherever I am, I can always add something to it. And then if I do want to hit, just post there, I can. Notepad, I have so many ideas in the middle of the night. Like I'm one of those people, I just wake up in the middle of the night all the time and always have something kind of burning in my head. So I found it's actually helped me get to sleep better by writing something down. That way I can stop thinking about it. Yeah. And then if I can read my chicken scratch in the morning, a lot of time I'll have good ideas. One thing, and we'll have to give a shout out to our boy, Chris Walker on this one, is the conference call cam, or the second cam. Yeah. So something that you and I do, something that I know I think he invented this, and I don't know, I haven't seen anyone else do it, but anytime so if you're on a call with somebody, you're on a Zoom, and you're talking with them here, you shouldn't record that call without their knowledge. And chances are they wouldn't be comfortable with you recording a call, just to post on social media. But if you have an earpiece in and there's no audio coming through in your computer, setting up a separate camera that only gets you, and it's just a camera of you talking and there's no one else on the other line. Anytime if you're on a guest on some other podcast, or if you're having more of a consultative type call, record those, and you might have some great nuggets. It's again, it comes down to the idea of when people ask you a question, whatever your answer is will make good content. That's typically what happens in those situations. You're typically answering questions, and now you have a video of you talking about whatever that topic was. That's really easy content to have too. So those are all kind of on top of the stuff I would do from the company level. Those are the other things I kind of add. And when it just comes down to it, you just got to post. It's consistency, it's repetition, and it's also skill building. The more you do it, the easier it is to write copy. I think people should, if not for the sake of like raising your company's profile, just the act of writing something every day is valuable, because you just become a better writer. And I guess the last thing I would say is I'm a big believer that you need to always be expanding your domain knowledge. It's domain knowledge that makes people want to follow you and hear from you. So you always have to be learning more, and you always have to be expanding your knowledge in new areas, because if you just talk about the same 5 things over again, people are going to tune you out.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing to happen if you build an audience, but half of them don't care to listen to what you have to say anymore, because you just keep saying the same damn thing over and over again.
Yeah.
That's the only way to really keep an audience going long term, is to expand your knowledge so you can help expand their knowledge. Things I haven't done yet, which I know are valuable, and I'd like you to talk about a little bit more too: personal newsletters, personal websites. And do you think you would ever write a book, Nate?
No. No, but I do periodically have people message me and tell me that I should write a book, and I just say, steal all my posts and just put it into a book. Go for it. Okay, so my process. You've been doing this longer than me, but let's just say I've been doing this for 15 consecutive months or whatever it is.
3 months longer than you.
Okay. All right. So, at the beginning, it was something that I was interested in doing. So I was thinking about slants on my industry. Admittedly, initial posts, now that I look back at them, were like somewhat generic compared to some of the stuff I post now, but it just started me writing. And like you talked about, the more you do it, the easier it gets. I think like one thing that like practitioners, people who do this on a regular basis, understand is that there is a way of communicating on certain platforms. So for me, it's on LinkedIn. There's a way to write that copy. There's a way to design that copy that makes it just readable, smooth, whatever. It's just like you get into that mode. And the more I did it, the more that switch in my brain just started to like slowly turn on, to the point now where it's on all the time. And I'm basically thinking in post format most of the time. It's like it's running in the back of my mind. And so what I'm doing is like capturing ideas, because I know what a post can look like. I know how many characters it should be, all that kind of stuff. And I, like you, I use the Notes app on my phone. And I am continually writing posts and post ideas that are anywhere from 25% to like 75% complete. And then what I do is I take whatever, like I just know what's in that app now. Like I just know what's down that list, and I'll go, okay, I want to post about this tomorrow. And then I'll get excited about it because I love the creative process of it. And I'll take like 3 or 4 of those posts out and I'll throw them into a Google. I have a folder in Google Drive. And I have 2 folders. One is drafts in the works and one is posted. And the drafts in the works probably has 15 in there, and I'll just pull 3 or 4 in there and I'll just start writing off of like a couple of them. And whatever one is feeling right and whatever one I'm flowing with, I'll go to it. And like, this is where I really geek out on this stuff, because the writing process of it is what I truly enjoy. Like I love the writing process of it. And so I will take a lot of time to write the simplest post because I want to do it. I will tweak one word here, one word there. Nobody cares about that stuff, but I just do it because like it's really important for me. And that's where I'm like exercising my brain and becoming a better writer. And that's the process that I do over and over and over again, to the point now where it's just like, it's basically automatic.
I didn't want to cut you off at any point there. Do you ever look at like the notes that are in your phone or wherever, the stuff that's really old you never got around to posting?
Way down at the bottom?
Ooh, it's bad.
Yes, I do. I was thinking about that as I was saying, I know what's on that list, because that list is really long. Yeah. And some of that stuff at the bottom has been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. But you know, and my inspiration, the biggest source of inspiration that I get is it's triggered through exercise. I mean, I think you and I both, like we work out every day in one way or another. And so when I work out, I listen to podcasts, none of it related to my direct industry. It's all stuff, everything from Rogan to a marketing podcast, whatever. And as I'm exercising, like it just frees up my mind, and I'll hear something and I'll go, oh, I can relate that to my industry, or that's an interesting perspective. And I'll just stop like while I'm on a run and just like start typing. And I mean, there's sometimes when I do that 3 or 4 times on a run. Like I'm not short on content. Like there's just so much of it that I'll never get to because I'm just thinking about it all the time. Yeah.
I was never a big listen to podcast guy, but ever since, kind of in the middle of all this, because the thing is, for me, my commute was always like really short, and because I took the train, one stop on the train, and I was at work, and I just have to get out, and like I walk more now. I have to like make a point to get out of the house, and so like I'll listen to a podcast every day, and I'm always listening to business related stuff just for like the same thing you said, like getting different ideas and stuff I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Yeah,
the thing I really want to stress to people is that when you start doing it, and you realize that posting it's an exercise. It's an exercise for you becoming a better content creator, for becoming a better writer, for you thinking differently or continually thinking differently about your industry. It forces you to like find holes to like go into. It just makes you better. So like, don't worry about, oh, what am I going to post about? Just like start doing it, because I promise it gets easier. And you'd be so surprised what direction your stuff will go in.
And don't stress about engagement numbers, because most of the posts that have really high engagement are garbage anyway. So
seriously, and like even the more tactical or the more granular you get, usually the lower the engagement, because it's serving a smaller audience, which is what you really want.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some of the closing stuff here, because this is also something that I've had to talk about with people. Equipment. What do you actually buy here? So here's my Amazon list.
Okay.
So you got to think about in terms of video, audio, and lighting. So I'll kind of start with.
Do I?
What's that? Well, you don't have a ring light on, do you? Yeah, I can tell. You don't have the glow. Although mine's kind of hit me kind of right here, forehead of mine. Anyway. All right. So what I always recommend to people. So first I'll start with on-site equipment, because this is back in the days when things are really fun, when you can do on-site events. I always recommend it. So camera's the same for both. So Logitech, you just need a standard high definition webcam. I went the Logitech, the C930E. There's a bunch of Logitechs that are kind of 1080p. Typically your computer's video is going to be garbage. Like if you're working in an office where you get like the standard computer that they gave you, nothing upgraded, you need a better camera. So, but yeah, just don't overthink it. You don't have to get anything super crazy, but like you should be able to get a Logitech high definition camera, $100 range or something like that. Nothing crazy. So that goes for whether, like right now I'm using one, but that's the same thing I would use it for in our office. Talking about microphones, so USB mics versus XLR mics. And I have to bring this up because there's a difference whether I'm doing things on site or at home. So when you're by yourself in a computer, all you need is a simple USB mic. I'm going to hold this up. Mm-hmm. This is a Blue Snowball. During normal times, these cost about $50. They're great. They serve their purpose. I know that both lighting and USB mics are crazy right now because of the pandemic. Like the prices have been fluctuating. Like I saw them for $45 one day, the next day they're $80. Like they're also all over the place with the supply and demand. But there's probably a lot of other mid-range USB mics, if not the Blue Snowball, that are probably in that $50 range that'll do just fine. When you're on site, when you're doing things kind of, with other people in the same room, that's when you need to get a mixer, and mixers are going to have different microphones. So the only mixer you need to worry about is the Zoom H6 mixer. So not Zoom as in Zoom webinars, but there's another company called Zoom that makes mixers. The H6 is a pretty small handheld, can be powered by battery, or you plug it in. It can plug 4 mics into it. So every person in the room can have their own kind of dedicated mic. And you'll need XLR mics for that, which are the more traditional. I believe they're analog, which is kind of the big difference. I didn't realize until a year ago that there's no such thing as a USB mixer. So at least a year ago, there wasn't. So there's mixers that have USB out ports or exporting, but not ones that take USB mics as imports. You need different kinds of mics when you put things into a mixer to do like an in-person podcast with everyone has their own microphone. Now, the Zoom H6 mixer, there are some things you'll want to get with that, because what you want to do is be able to tie it into, you want to be able to record on that thing locally. So you get multi-track, high quality recording. And then you also want to have an output that goes to your live streaming platform if you're doing what we're doing here, or if you're taking any kind of video. Now it's got a USB drive, but the thing is that when that hooks into a computer, you can't record on the thing. It actually you record on a computer. And it's a long story short, you want to record the actual audio tracks on the mixer itself, and then use the analog output, which is like just a line out. You get like a 3.5 millimeter cord, which is headphone looking cord. You want to plug that into a USB adapter. And so the audio you'll use for what we're doing right here will be that audio you record the audio on that thing, but the audio used for your video live thing will be coming out of the line out drive, plugging into your computer. If you have any questions, hit me up and I can explain this again, or just hit rewind when I put this on YouTube and hopefully it makes sense. So need a cord, need an adapter. You'll need some XLR mics and XLR cables. I think the ones we got in terms of mics were $60, $80, something like that. You don't need anything crazy. Like for XLR mics, you can get like really expensive $1,000 microphones. You don't need that. Ring lights, getting to that. We have one really large 18-incher. And then we have a bunch of small desk size ones like the one I have here that's lighting up my forehead. That's probably 10 inches or so, something like that. Maybe it's 8 inches. You just turn on the yellow, turn off the white for me at least. I don't need to be completely washed out, but they're cheap. Like the desktop ones are typically $25. Now they might be more because of the pandemic, but nothing you need to spend crazy money on. So that's all the equipment you need. And it's really not that much. The mixer is probably $300, $350, but everything else is pretty cheap. Now, last thing I'll talk about is tools and stuff you do to put this together. So StreamYard is what we use for live events, LinkedIn Live, YouTube, Facebook. We're hitting all three at the same time right now, and it also makes a recording. So you can gives you an audio and video recording, so you can download everything afterwards, does all this stuff automatically. One thing I'll mention is that if you're not doing live video, if you're not actually streaming live, you're better off just using Zoom. One thing I love about Zoom is that you can record and it'll give you multi-track recording. So I was talking about the mixer before, but the same thing for Zoom the video player. It'll record your track and my track on 2 different files. So if you need to adjust the levels, if one person is quieter than the other one, you can do that automatically, versus if it's on one file, that's really hard to do. So just use Zoom if you're looking to do a podcast and you're not looking to do anything that's actually like live streaming anyone. Just use Zoom. Video editing. This is actually one I didn't know. We always use Premiere, which is can be kind of pricey. DaVinci Resolve does everything that Premiere does, except it's completely free and actually does better subtitles. I don't know why, but the Premiere subtitles just look like garbage. At least we couldn't figure it out, but DaVinci Resolve is great. It's a little bit easier to use too. But you need video editing software, everything you need to do to kind of put this stuff together, add the banners and everything else you can do with DaVinci Resolve. Podcast editing. There's a site called Descript.
Yep.
Descript is great. So it fixes the levels. You can make it take out filters. It can create transcripts. You can do tons of stuff I haven't looked into yet. We've been using YouTube for subtitling. I think Descript might be able to do that automatically too. I'm not sure. But a lot of stuff on Descript is totally free. YouTube is great for, as I said, subtitling. YouTube has a vested interest in giving everything subtitles so they can search it. You know what I mean? But if you upload your video to YouTube, even if you don't share it with anyone, but you put it on, just put it on unlisted or whatever, it will create subtitling files, which you can then download. So they're about 90% accurate. So you might need to kind of fix them up a little bit. But in terms of like subtitling, you take that file, you put it in DaVinci Resolve with your video, and boom, you got subtitles. Didn't have to transcribe anything. Last things, podcast hosting distribution. We use Libsyn. That's been around forever. So that'll put your podcast on every podcast channel you can possibly want. And simple image editing. I would hire an intern. So a lot of graphic design interns out there who can kind of put all your stuff together. They can make your YouTube thumbnails, all that kind of stuff. Pay them, but for simple images and stuff like that, I can do that. If your budget's really tight, there are a lot of kind of free image stuff online like Canva and stuff like that that can do a lot of that work. So that's it. That's my list. I might make a document out of all the stuff I bought, but
I'll never forget before I started doing video. When you were pushing me to do video, I messaged you and said, what should I get? And I think your wife was out of town and you went down the rabbit hole on like, you sent me this like full list. So here,
I took this, what I just did, I copy and pasted that message I sent you and put it here. So I just basically reread most of that. So
cool. Okay. So for those who are not as, let's just say, savvy or even interested in all of those things, I'll tell you my process, which is much shorter and simpler, although it does cost money. Let me just start with saying that that I have a budget. My company gives me a budget to create content. Okay, that's like really important for people to know because that's the only reason I'm able to do some of the things that I'm able to do. So James, as you mentioned, full credit to Chris for the external cam idea. I mean, that's for sure where you and I got it. So like you said, I have what is it? It's a Canon EOS 800D camera and a tripod, and it sits, usually I'm in my office, which is outside, and it's an external detached garage, and I have the garage door up and I get tons of natural light. So like, I never have to worry about lighting, but I'll have the camera just set up like on the other side of my laptop, on the other side of my desk. And like you said, it's just recording me. And if I know that I'm going to be on a call where I'm going to maybe like drop some knowledge or like whatever, like potentially have a clip, then I'll just record that thing. The mic that I use is it's a wireless Lav Mic. It's nothing fancy. I think it costs a couple $100. So what I just described, I think we bought a refurbished camera and the mic was probably $800 together, plus the tripod. So maybe $900. The process though, I outsource all of my video editing. I don't do any of it myself. My team doesn't do it. Nobody does it in-house. So I have a freelancer who's really skilled at doing this kind of producing this kind of content. So I'll record full video clips. If I have time, I'll actually go through those and find timestamps just to make it faster for him and it's cheaper for me. And then we have a shared folder in Google Drive. I'll upload the raw footage into Google Drive. We also have a shared Slack channel. I'll send him the link to the raw video in Slack, and I'll give him timestamps if I have those. He created the template for me. He knows how to find the clips. He like totally gets it. I was delighted the very first time. The guy knows nothing about employer branding. I gave him no direction. I just sent him raw footage and he came back with like dialed in clips. I was like, well, this guy like knows what to find. He puts them back in a folder for me. And then I just have clips to go off of. So like, I really don't do anything besides the work that I normally do. I just record it. And then we've also started doing this with Zoom. Our co-founder and I, we've started having these conversations where we're talking about the business and the industry and all this kind of stuff. We do it over Zoom and we record those. I send him the Zoom recording. I'll send my freelancer the Zoom recording, and he does the same thing, puts it into a template, chops it up, finds the clips, adds subtitles and everything. Internally, we use Descript ourselves. For like the last 3 or 4 months, we've started producing like authentic video content for clients where we like interview them like this. We used a script for that when we do our own production. It's such a slick tool. Like you said, most of the features are free, at least until you get to a certain point of usage, and then you pay for usage after that. But I haven't personally used it, but the team that does use it loves it. Yeah, they can't speak highly enough about it. And so I think that's my process, man. It's like, it's pretty simple.
You made me think of 2 things I forgot. So one, when I use my second cam, it's just my cell phone. And I have a second one of these and I plug into it and just can buy a converter. So you didn't even have to buy a separate camera.
Yeah.
And I do, in full disclosure, I have an excellent digital specialist, and she puts together the video clips for us. But it was, I guess the thing though too is like the thing I mentioned, like she didn't go to school for video editing. It's just something that she was able to pick up. It's something that anyone who's smart and tech savvy can learn to do. You know what I mean? So real video editing where you're getting like professionally shot videos, like a different level. But for like the stuff for like social media video editing, like it's something that anyone I think can learn if that's their job or if they have time to pick it up. So
yeah, I mean, I think like now, if you're busy or if you don't have the interest, which are both cases for me, outsourcing it, it's just it's a way to get it done, and you can do it pretty cheap these days. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like all this stuff, like I get messages sometimes, people ask me like, oh, how do you create your video? What do you use for editing and stuff? And like the honest answer is like, I have no idea because I don't do any of it myself. But you just gave like a good rundown. There's like DIY stuff that are easy to do. I think it's really more just like getting into the habit, and just like embracing the idea of recording yourself talking to somebody. And when you can record yourself talking to somebody, it's like, it just suddenly makes sense. If you think about the concept, it sounds kind of weird at first, but when you start doing it and you start seeing what the clips look like,
you spend 0 time rehearsing anything. You've spent 0 time writing anything, and it comes off as fluid and natural because it was a conversation you were having. It's not a pre-prepared speech. So it just works that much better.
You and I used to do that with each other. We had like, for a while, we had like regular meetings.
Our first employer content shows were just you and I doing Zoom calls.
Yeah, and recording
to nobody.
Talking. Hey.
Anyway.
I need some video. Let's schedule a call.
All right. I think we went pretty long on this one, which I knew was going to happen. We are going to be back in. So we don't always have our next topics figured out, but next topic, we're going to be demystifying the employer value proposition, the EVP.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun one that Nate will be largely leading since that's his domain, but it should be a good show. That'll be in 2 weeks. But anyways, that's a wrap for the employer content show for this week. If you want to hear more of what Nate and I have to say, you can subscribe to the Hirewell channel on YouTube, where we have a playlist of all of our episodes, and the Talent Insights podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon. Nate, thanks for coming as always, and everyone else, we'll see you soon.